We're learning more about what led up to the new indictment of former FBI Director James Comey over alleged threats against President Trump with a picture of seashells. Sources tell MS Now that the case was on the back burner. That was until Pam Bondi was fired as Attorney General. When new acting Attorney General Todd Blanche sought to win Trump's appointment to the job permanently, the seashells case gained new steam. A Justice Department official denied that Bondi had delayed or slow-walked the Comey case, saying that the investigation had begun a year ago. While many legal experts have claimed that the case is meritless, Blanche made it clear this week that the DOJ takes any threats of violence seriously.
So I think it's fair to say that threatening the life of anybody is dangerous and potentially a crime. His alleged conduct is the same kind of conduct that we will never tolerate and that we will always investigate and regularly prosecute.
We should note, though, that his former client is no stranger to using violent rhetoric and images.
In another now deleted post, Trump showing himself images of himself with a baseball bat near Bragg's head. Trump has also called Alvin Bragg an animal.
The former president sharing this image on Truth Social. It shows a hog-tied President Biden, his hands and feet bound on the back of a pickup truck.
But all we have really over here is the fake news, right? And to get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much.
This morning, Trump reposted a social media post from one of his supporters calling for all of the Democratic members in that video to be hanged. And as if Trump wanted to make sure there was no ambiguity about what he meant, he followed up with his own post. Seditious behavior punishable by death.
Miles Taylor is back with us, and also joining the conversation is Michael Feinberg, MS Now national security and intelligence analyst and former FBI assistant special agent in charge. Michael, I want to take advantage of your past life, that impressive job title that you once had. In a past life, you could have maybe been assigned to a case like this in order to try to build that case, find some evidence to lead to an indictment of someone. Todd Blanche told CBS this week, Major Garrett, in an interview, that it was misleading to characterize the indictment as solely based on the seashell photo. What do you make of Blanche's assessment? I mean, do you think there's actually any other evidence here that your former colleagues have found?
I would give zero credence to anything Todd Blanche said in that clip, and I would gently push back against the notion that this is something I could have worked on. Because quite simply, there is no predication there to justify a federal investigation. The statute that was used in the indictment requires an actual articulated threat. 86 is an old barroom term for getting rid of an unruly customer. It stretches credulity to believe that that would be an actual threat of violence. But just for the sake of argument, let's say it was. Then it's inexcusable that it took 11 months of investigation to arrest the person who supposedly was providing an imminent threat to the life of the president. This whole thing is ludicrous from top to bottom, and clearly nothing but retribution for the fact that Comey is somebody Trump doesn't like.
Have you heard whether or not there are any FBI agents who were working on this or who actively declined to work on it?
I don't know. There are a lot of rumors going around the alumni community that the first time Jim Comey was indicted, a number of agents refused to carry out sort of performative perp walk. In other words, they were not willing to go to his house at 6 a.m. They were not willing to arrest him in front of media for a couple reasons. First of all, that's not something the FBI does. They don't do perp walks. They do press conferences afterwards when there are criminal charges filed, but they generally do take seriously the belief that somebody is innocent until proven guilty, and you don't attempt to shade or flavor a case by media spectacles. You let the work speak for itself.
That's the old DOJ, Michael. I want to bring in, because I think it's important that folks understand that the Trump administration, the DOJ, doesn't just get to create law and then charge people as if there isn't existing law. There's Supreme Court precedent that could upend the Comey indictment. There's two of them. Alonis versus United States from 2015. Federal criminal liability generally does not turn solely on the results of an act without considering the defendant's mental state. Quote, wrongdoing must be conscious to the criminal. To be criminal. Counterman v. Colorado, 2023. The state must show that the defendant consciously disregarded a substantial risk that his communications would be viewed as threatening violence. So those things don't seem to, if they didn't find that in 11 months, if the Secret Service did not find that when they went and knocked on James Comey's door and talked to him about this, it's unlikely that this DOJ is going to find that. Miles, when you talk to administration officials of every stripe, of any administration, what they always tell us as reporters is this is a whole of government approach to healthcare. This is a whole of government approach to lowering your costs. It feels like there's a whole of government approach to silencing critics at this point.
Oh, there is. And here's the thing. They should not be worried about whether the James Comey charges stick. They won't. There's a fake case. These are false charges. What they should be worried about is whether any of them engaged in criminal conduct to bring these charges. I'm as serious as a heart attack about this. Deprivation of rights, selective vindictive prosecution. These are things that are illegal and unconstitutional. When Todd Blanche basically conceded that this thing went from the back burner to the front burner when he came back into office, was that an admission that he wanted to bring a case that the president requested? Did Donald Trump already make the case of selective vindictive prosecution on September 20th at 6:44 p.m. when he basically tweeted to Pam Bondi, I need you to prosecute this guy? This is serious. Anyone who's in that chain of these decisions, they should be worried about in a future administration. Could they be charged for having violated James Comey's rights intentionally and deliberately? That's the concern here.
To Congress.
So then, Miles, why did the Comey case go from the back burner to front and center? Why would Todd Blanche do that, Miles? Leading question.
He might be auditioning for a job. He wants, and look, Donald Trump knows this, okay? I heard him in person in the first term say, I like actings. You want to know why I like actings? They do what I say. He likes an acting title because it gets people to suck up to him. That's why we ended the first administration with so many acting officials. What is Todd Blanche doing? He's really trying to earn the elimination of that word acting. He really wants the job that badly. All of these things cut against the argument that's being made here in the indictment that this is somehow about the protection of the president of the United States. If you really thought 8647 was a threat to the president's life, it's quite an unusual thing to bring a case that results in those numbers being on every single network around the world for an entire week. That's not what this is about. This is about revenge. It's about retribution. That's why the case is going to fall apart, but that's also why it's not going to be forgotten after this, because the process that led to it is potentially suspicious from a criminal standpoint.
Michael Feinberg, I look forward to, if we can pull up E3 Renee, these other folks maybe getting a knock on the door from the DOJ. Since 86, you're not allowed to say anymore. Jack Posobiec, who is a MAGA influencer, 8646 is on January 29, 2022. You remember 46 is Joe Biden. Matt Gaetz, February 28th, 2024, he's now a TV host. We've now 86th. McCarthy, McDaniel, McConnell. Better days are ahead for the Republican Party. A shirt you can buy right now on Amazon.com. 8646. I assume those people will not be getting knocks on the door because 86 is so scary.
If we're waiting for that to happen, I would very much suggest packing a lunch. This has nothing to do with unbiased prosecution of law enforcement priorities. This is about silencing a presidential critic. And it's worth noting something about what Miles said. It's not just potential legal ramifications for the people involved in this. I have no doubt that Trump is going to issue a blanket pardon for every single person in the executive branch. But there are professional consequences. Todd Blanche should remember that John Eastman, the intellectual architect of Donald Trump's, what I will refer to with a bit of prediction, the intellectual architect of Donald Trump's first attempt to carry out a electoral coup, was recently disbarred, and the appeal of his disbarment was denied. So Todd Blanche should watch his step a little.
Already suffering the consequences, rejected by the Met Club.
The Metropolitan Club here in Washington. Good on them. Miles Taylor, Michael Feinberg, thank you both very much for coming back to the weekend.